1, 2. Now they can.
Hello, how you guys doing?
This is only on Facebook Live because I haven't admitted anyone to the, are you ready to admit people?
Yes.
Okay.
So I can tell them we'll get started in a second.
Yeah. All right, everyone's in. No. So you're gonna have to turn off the sound. That way there's no feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be able, oh, they can see this. Why did this exit out? Sorry, technical difficulties.
You guys just give us a few minutes.
There we go. You should be able to see that. That's what I wanted to do. Oh.
I don't see myself.
Okay. So that should be there. You'll have to go to this. It's on the screen. So you'll just scroll.
Gotcha.
Okay. Only there. You want me to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, hey everyone. Welcome to Flywheel's live studio. You're here for Marketing Outside the Box. We're super excited for this event. Sorry we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, but we will be running very shortly. If you have never been on Zoom or if you are new to Zoom, we would love for you to turn on your video and mute yourself. You can do this at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. The little microphone, just click that and that will mute you. And then to the right of it is your video. Make sure you click that and it will turn on your video so we can create this community. If you think of any questions on Zoom, there is a chat box that you can send your questions in and we will get started.
All right, guys, so welcome to Marketing Outside the Box for week 3. My name is E.A. Green, the owner and operator of the Open Media Lab, which is a content creation studio and micro content agency. All right, so if you can, you're gonna bear with me. If you guys have any questions, if I'm going too fast, just let me know. I think we can kind of work this out. All right, so. All right, so just to kind of give you guys a little bit more of my background. Again, my name is E.A. Green. I have about 3 years of producing and engineering podcast experience, 2 years of producing visual content. And ultimately, when I look at micro content and content in general, I truly believe that it's the lifeblood of your business, primarily because this really helps promote your story. No. All right, so just to kind of give you a little background story, essentially I started my whole business from the second bedroom of my home. Basically started from the room, and now we're here at 301 North Main Street in the Winston Tower on the 24th floor, where again, you can just come in and be able to rent the space by the hour in order to create your vlogs, your podcasts, or any other short form video by using the lovely view, or if you want to be able to kind of create that crisp experience. All right. So again, Open Media Lab is a micro content agency, a content creation space, and a content network. So what that means is that I create my own content for explicitly to, almost like a passion project of sorts, or being able to essentially have it for the general amusement or creative. Oh, can you guys hear me? I'm gonna just kind of do like a quick sound check. Can you guys hear me?
I'm giving us a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, or just reply in the.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay.
Not very consistent, fading in and out.
Okay. Does this help? Check, check. So,
I don't know if the mic is working. That might be the problem.
okay. So we can just switch it back to. We can just switch it back to the camera. It's perfectly fine. I'll just do this one.
I think it picked it up, yeah. And then it's picking up a lot of air.
It's the mic, so it's just not this one.
Okay, can everyone hear now?
Can you guys hear me?
That's much better. Okay,
Okay.
Yes, that's better.
No
much
problem.
better, much better.
No
Okay.
problem.
I'll be back. I really watch it some
Okay. All right. So go on to the next slide, please. All right. So the objective of this whole series that we had for the month of March, again, is trying to be able to piece it all together. How can you guys be able to create different types of content in order to really help promote your story, making sure that we're covering different things such as your etiquette, your confidence, transitions, branding, and so on and so forth. Go to the next slide. All right. So again, the assumptions, even if you were in this class physically with me here today, right, the assumptions and expectations that I have is just that there's a general knowledge of the people who are that you have about content creating in general. I will try to make this experience as interactive as possible. Almost kind of like doing a choose your own adventure based off of the feedback that you guys have given through the live in terms of Instagram, Facebook, or the Zoom call. We'll try to make sure that we can cover as much as we possibly can. Can you slow down a little bit? All right. So I'm going to try to be as transparent as possible. And again, this is a no judge zone. So don't judge us for the scrappy sound, or like if I'm not looking too clear. We'll make sure that we can do this for the best of our ability to make sure that we're good to go. All right, and one last room. Let's try to make this as fun as possible. All right, so again, if you were in this class, it would be mandatory. So I know, we're not in the best of conditions and making sure that we're able to cover this, but we're gonna make this work. All right, so this week, what we're talking about, the name of this class for the third week of Marketing Outside the Box is called DOTS. All right, for short, it is something that I picked up over, a couple of months ago. And ultimately what it means is don't overthink stuff. All right, depending on who you are, you can kind of have your own civil liberties with what that means. But ultimately, it's about successful execution through action. We're all about, it's just about moving forward, about getting it done, and not really harping on trying to make things perfect. All right, so the overview we'll talk about briefly is that we're going to talk about what we discussed in our last class. So in our last class, we discussed about formats and topics. With formats and topics is very crucial when you're deciding to create your own product or your own podcast or blog or short form video. All right, and there's different things that kind of come along with that. Along with this, we'll be talking more about storytelling, segues, and creative execution. So what that means is that over the first couple of weeks, we talked about what our concept would be if we decide if we're going to go between video or audio, and we discussed the different things between themes and topics. And now with storytelling is about actually being able to actually execute a full episode. So that episode, given what you decided how you want to do it, when you looked at your who, what, when, where, why, and how we actually go through those things. segues are very, very important in order to get you from one topic or from one portion or another. And lastly, it's about actually how you can get this actually done. So it's all, more than just having an idea and being able to decide what you want to do. Creative execution and being able to actually get it done makes, is very, very crucial. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So in the last overview, last class, what we discussed, is about format. So what we have to look at this is if we decide what medium we want to use, if we're going to do audio or visual. Clearly, visual will both have audio and visual a part of it. But depending on what you are looking to discuss or what you're looking to share or what value you're looking to provide, if there's one or, there can be one format that can help you more than the other. All right, and other things when you look at format in terms of the style. So that's if it's going to be interview style, if it's going to be Q&A, or if it's going to be, a hybrid of multiple pieces. All right, and then we also discussed what the formula was. We'll be discussing a little bit more if you weren't in the class last week about what the formula is, about what I believe works, for any of the content that I help create and what I suggest for our clients in order to move forward. And that allows us to create structure. Themes, again, between themes and topics, you have to understand that themes are about general direction and topics are the step-by-step direction to your story. All right, so we're gonna go to the next slide. All right, so again, this class is called execution, and it's what it's really all about. Again, the main theme that you'll be looking at is me saying, do not overthink stuff, okay? Don't overthink it. It's really about when we talk about from previous classes, if you're gonna curate content or if you're gonna document content, it's all about what the story is. And ultimately, I honestly believe that most consumers or most people or most clients, we have grown to be more of a, I guess, nosy society, if you want to say. Like we have just a general, inquisition that we just want to gain as much knowledge as possible. And to kind of put that in perspective, if you look at, music or movies that you might, watch today compared to 10 to 20 years ago, before you would actually hear a song, you would only care about who actually sung the song, right? But now when you have different music or movies, a lot of people are interested on who sung the song, who wrote the song, who produced the song. So when you are actually documenting your story and kind of going through and you're not really focusing on it being perfect, but being what is acceptable, right? You kind of have a different thing. So when you are looking to actually execute your actual episode or your actual piece of content that you want to show, there's different elements that you want to make sure that you can cover for a great story. So one of these things are grabbing their attention, setting the mood, let them imagine, being very descriptive and use casual everyday words if you can help it. So that, I'm not saying that if, I know kind of picking on some of the students that were here over the last couple of weeks, like if you are a doctor and you're worried about, doing content about chiropractic, your chiropractic practice, there's certain things that you just cannot help. But if you are going to, talk about, lumbar or something like your back, you want to make sure that you are giving a lot more description in order to be able to help the actual listener or the viewer to be able to understand. Right. So if you want to do that by providing visual aids or essentially finding ways to connect the dots, right, that can be able to kind of give a great example, the same way how I mentioned about how, when you looked at documenting, how you looked at a song from 20 years ago versus a new song that might come out today, being able to really kind of be very descriptive depending on what medium you're going to use will actually help and make your life that much easier. So, so when you are looking at, creating a podcast, it's very simple and it's very overlooked, is that you have to make sure that, you are very descriptive of what you're seeing or if something is happening in front of you, because if they're listening to you on the podcast, they can't see what you're looking at, right? So it's very silly, or that very simple as that may sound, it is very, very crucial. So ultimately, for your elements of a great story, you want to make sure you have all of these things together. All right, so before we move forward, are there any questions that we have so far?
Let me check all of our platforms. I think you're good.
All right. So next what we're going to talk about is the structure of a great story. All right, so if you remember in the previous topics or previous classes that we had when we discussed about topics, you want to make sure this is very reliant on the sequencing of the different topics that you're going to talk about. So when you're actually planning out your episode for maybe your episodes for a month or your content that you're going to display for a specific theme, like if you want to continue with the Women's History Month theme, you want to make sure that depending on the overall tone that you're going to have for these different episodes, you want to essentially guide them the same way as if you were to guide an actual episode or a series that you might watch on Netflix or regular cable TV or any other platform. So when you look at the structure of a great story, that you always want to make sure you have a setup, confrontation, and resolution. So with the setup, again, you're establishing the setting. You're going to introduce the listener. So when we discussed this before, is really about making sure that you kind of create that repetitiveness that isn't too noticeable. So that simple thing of, introducing yourself within the first 12 seconds of the actual episode or the actual piece of content, and making sure that people understand exactly what they're getting themselves into very, very early. You want to make sure that, you can create very authentic, content, but still even having a structure in the way that you do your different things. All right, so next, when you look at your confrontation, again, this is like the bulk of your story. This is really where you're going to really turn it up and make sure that people are going to be as captivated as possible. So you want to make sure that you are doing different things like, you're establishing who the characters are, the different players that are within your story, right? You want to make sure that if, something tragic happens, that you're not going to lead to that whole thing. Unless if you, the way that you tell your story is where you may, kind of show what the ending is and then how someone actually gets there. And then, of course, the last piece is the resolution, which is essentially the payoff. So depending on what you are going to be talking about, we would assume that ultimately you really want to kind of show what value your business will have for that potential consumer, that potential client, is that you have to make sure that you're establishing what the problem is, how your value actually will help them kind of get over that problem, and then what the payoff will be. So what they actually going to walk away with. And if you're very intentional in the way that happens, you're really off at a really great start, and a lot of the other things kind of just handle themselves along the way. All right, so we go to the next. All right, so if we're kind of looking at this in the grand scheme of things, right, so we kind of talked about what the format formula is. We're assuming that everybody who's watching, we're going to kind of stay with the same idea. All right, so when you're looking at those three sections, right, you really want to kind of cover the beginning up to where we show the start to the topic and theme. All right, so this is where if you're gonna have any ads or any introduction or overview, we want to make sure that we're setting up the scene or we're setting up the story in those, typically within the first 5 to 10 minutes. Depending if your content is social based, you don't really, you want to make sure that people who are following you from episode to episode, they actually care about what's going on with you, right? So, ultimately, you have this whole situation where, you may be home or you may be working from home or different things of that nature. You have, potential content that you can share with those things. So I see we have a question, so we're going to check.
Is the setup the same as an opening hook, or is the opening hook part of the confrontation?
So the opening hook would definitely be a part of the setup. All right, so this is one of those things that after you introduce your actual episode, so people will know what the piece of content is called, even if you have a name for it or not, what it's going to be about. But you also want to make sure that you are going to be discussing or let people know what the rest of that content will actually be about. So if, for instance, if you're looking at the podcast that I created called Open Up Shop, when we kind of set things up, I usually had a skit in the beginning of the actual show, right? And then when I came and I introduced myself, I always kind of referred back to what the actual skit was, so you knew what we will be discussing the rest of the episode. All right, so in that setup, that's when I made sure I discussed, again, what we are normally, what we're here for and what the objective is, and then kind of overview of what we're going to discuss and how we were going to facilitate that was through the guest that I had for that actual episode. All right, another question?
No, Jay just wanted you to know I did my homework and I missed everyone, and Eric, you are great.
All right, appreciate it, thanks. All right, so, and then when we're looking at the actual confrontation, again, this is where the bulk of it is going to be the topic and the theme. All right, so if you kind of look at it, again, the way that we're kind of covering this is that if the month of March is Women's History Month, that is going to be the theme of your actual discussion, right? For all of, for the following month. But, the way you might kind of facilitate that is by, if you have guests, you might have all women guests, or you might really kind of show the specific topic if you want to discuss, financial disparity, between, in terms of workplace, in terms of, the pay gap. This will be a particular topic that you might necessarily cover, and you might kind of go into it a little bit deeper by saying about, the difference between negotiating your actual salary when you are going through an interview. Kind of doing this on the top of the head, but so if it doesn't sound, fully fluid, I appreciate it. All right, and then what we kind of use to kind of take you from the confrontation to the wrap up or towards the end is where I kind of show this mid-roll ad / break, right? The reason why we do this is that it essentially helps give the viewer a chance to breathe. It gives that viewer a chance to kind of, even yourself while you're recording that potential episode, taking a break. Again, it sets you up just in case if you do set yourself for mid-roll ads or ads in general. But what this does is that it allows you to switch gears. All right, and we're going to really kind of talk about this in the next section when we look at segues and how we're going to do these things. All right, and then when we look at the wrap up and the wind down, essentially you want to always make sure that you are going to summarize what you just essentially discussed throughout the rest, through the whole episode. So for me, for the content that I created, the way that I did this was we might have discussed the topic, and we're going to talk about, the wage gap and, the disparity between, negotiating your wage. And then what we would kind of discuss is how can we apply these in everyday life? So I had a segment where actually you would then essentially rehash a lot of the things that we talked about through the bulk of it. So just in case if you say, hey, I just need to, kind of like slide through everything else and know exactly what I need to take away from this, we had a section that kind of summarizes the whole thing, right? But this is kind of perfect, even though you might not necessarily, need both one or the other. It really does help to have both because, again, most consumers are a little bit more nosy than others. So they really want to know a lot of the different things that kind of take place. All right, and of course, with your outro and your sign off, the way you want to kind of look at this is that this is a way that you can essentially, again, the same way you have that intro where you really kind of establishing what you're going to be talking about and what the name of the content is, you also want to have an outro that has that same thing. So in your outro, it's basically going to be thanking the person or the people for actually viewing or listening to your content because, ultimately at the end of the day, they gave you their time in order to consume what you had to provide, right? And it's just being very grateful and very humble for allowing somebody, for someone to take the time out to actually enjoy or consume what you created. And then in your sign off, you always want to make sure that, this is the particular ask that you're going to have. So if I provided you value for these, for this last 3 weeks or for this hour that we're having here today, my sign off will literally be go on Facebook, go on Instagram, go on my website and sign up for my newsletter right? This is basically what that call to action is. And essentially, I want you to follow, I want you to like, I want you to subscribe, because ultimately, your help doing that is what's going to help me get my word out to more people, which is my ultimate goal. All right, next slide. All right, so the next section, keep going. No, going up.
I don't know.
Right there. That page right there. So yeah, if you can. Okay, next section. All right, so when you're looking about telling your story, you're looking at the different elements, looking at the structure, right? The thing that's gonna actually take you from place to place, that's gonna take you from the beginning to the end, and I feel like it's very, very crucial, and we have to make sure that we discuss it, are segues. All right, literally it's gonna be how you're gonna travel from topic to topic, or from section to section. So if you look at your episode, similar to when you had your had to write essays or write papers when you were in school, essentially you had your intro, you had your body, and then you had your conclusion. Right. So literally, what's gonna happen? What those things are to get you from one paragraph to the other, or one thought to the other, are segues.
I think this question is for the previous slide. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marianne. But the question is, would you use this format on Facebook Live? And I think it's the format from the previous.
Okay, so me in particular, yes. So it's not to say that this is something that you copy and paste. I believe that this is a really, really good practice. This is based off of research that I've done in terms of when I've created my own content, or I've been able to create content for others. You kind of notice these trends, when you're kind of going through or listening to other people's content as well. So the thing is, I would also you will kind of have to tailor it again towards the medium that you're going to use, right? So that you can be very concise and to the point. The last thing that you really want is to have, you asking people to kind of be on the Zoom call or Facebook Live or Instagram Live or anything for that matter, and you're all over the place. So a lot of times what I've kind of gotten feedback from is that, you have social content. So when I say social content, meaning things that are just kind of like color commentary, things that are meant to feel funny and authentic, you essentially can still have structure and still kind of have it feel like organized chaos in a sense, right? So the thing is, you don't necessarily have to be calling these things out when you have your different listeners, or you're not going to say, hey, now we're going to stop and do this. It's just one of those things that you're going to keep in the back of your mind as you practice, as you actually execute these things, right? And put it to practice that how this is exactly what you're kind of go through. So for me, if you kind of, if you've been with us since the beginning of the month, you'll notice that my intro for this class has been the same every single time. I've always discussed what the title of the program was and what we're here for. I've always discussed who I was, what my background is, and how I kind of got to this point, right? To really kind of help establish some credibility with you guys, because when you look at content in general, you want to make sure that you have the understanding that it will always be somebody's first time paying attention to your content, right? So it's almost like similar to any type of subscription. If you look at it from a subscription type of point of view, someone who comes to you on day one, right, might potentially fall off, right? And they might listen to episode 1, and they're busy, they can't listen to episode 2, and they pick back up on episode 6, right? You want to make sure that you have some things that are very repetitive, but not necessarily noticeable, right? Because it just really helps establish what the journey that people are actually going through during this process. So I hope that helped, Marianne. All right, but if it doesn't, let me know. We'll get back to it. All right, so with segues, again, is going to be how you travel from topic to topic. All right, so the best way to do this, right, are, these are a number of different ways that you can kind of do these things. So looking at examples, painting or showing visuals. So again, looking at it, if you're doing strictly audio or you're going to do strictly video, you have to be very, very descriptive, right? One of the best things that I really kind of I kind of use is personal insight. So again, consumers are nosy. I felt like, or inquisitive. Like people love to be able to know what is happening with these different things. Make sure. So when you look at personal insight, these are the different things that actually help establish your credibility with the different users. This helps establish your I guess actually your standing, your stake in the ground, showing that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Right. So some other ways that you can do it again is taking a break. So I mentioned that with the format, depending on the situation, right? Taking a break actually helps the consumer kind of digest what you have to say. Right. And again, from when you are recording this to when it's edited and finished, you can say, hey, we're going to take a quick break, right? And it can be a transitional sound that basically allows, it can be between 3 to 5 seconds or some music or something like that, so that if the listener wanted to pause for a moment, to digest it or whatever the case may be, it's almost like a very subconscious way to get them to switch gears. Right. And to kind of double back on the Instagram Live situation, I don't really think taking a break really makes that much sense, depending on the medium, because live is just right now. And, if you're going to take a break, you might as well just stop. So, and then one of the other pieces that I really wanted to share, especially if you're going to have guests, right? Because along with a lot of our actual experience in life is that we might have different colleagues or different people that we work with that actually can help provide a little bit more context for different topics that we might have. Or if you are interviewing a coworker or someone or a business partner or anyone, active listening is the best way, right? So when I say active listening is that if I'm discussing something with any of you guys and I'm interviewing you about the discussion that we're going to have for that day, if I know that I need to get to another segment, or if I have another thought that I want to kind of cover, active listening really helps you when you're having that interview to be able to say, okay, I'm hearing you talk about, the new strategic selling, right? And I know that we need to talk about, how to record a podcast. Like my main thing is finding a way that I know that I need to talk about in the next subject and finding a way to connect it to what we're already talking about. So not necessarily being abrupt by saying, oh, I want to switch gears or something like that, which does help, but finding a way to actually connect the dots from what you're discussing to what you need to really helps. And it's just really, really smooth. And it really kind of just helps the flow of conversation. All right, so just to kind of, again, for more context, looking back at the format formula, right, segues will always be helpful when you're looking at your overview to your guest or from your guest to your topic theme. So again, these are just different ways that you're kind of looking at. That if you have a specific format that you follow, right, and that you just know that this is how you're, planning your episodes out, you need to make sure that, you have your go-tos that help you kind of get to those different places. So again, we can kind of show from based off what we showed in the previous slide, there are different things that we could use in order to go from one segment or one section to the other. All right, so do we have any questions?
Undeniably rooted. Oh, it's not a question, just a comment. Just said, so true. They are very inquisitive. Thanks for doing this live. I'm hundreds of miles away.
Perfect. I really thank you for being so far away and still logging in. But yes, consumer as a whole, again, just very inquisitive. Like people just want to know as much as they possibly can, and they're going to keep what they want and they're going to throw away the rest. So essentially, being that open book or being very transparent really just kind of helps establish that connection with the potential listener or that viewer. So what everybody would love to be able to say is that, hey, I was here with Eric or EA on his very first episode, right? When he was filming in his second bedroom, now he has a whole studio downtown, right? People will love to be able to really root their actual story. We have people in this room that can actually say that, right? So people love to be able to say, hey, like I was a part of the journey and I kind of feel invested in your success. So those are one of those things that just being transparent and open, to what you feel comfortable for, right? And what's appropriate, really kind of helps establish that credibility, because people can see through the nonsense now. Like, we have an understanding that you can be both. You can be professional and you can be relatable. And that's simply how this whole thing goes. So we're gonna go to the next slide. All right. So I feel like a lot of people asked about this, and this wasn't originally on my on the deck, but I wanted to make sure that we essentially covered it. So now we have our concept. We discussed our formats and our topics. We discussed how you actually structure a story so that you can actually get the content out and be able to, to be able to know what you're going to say or what you're going to share. Now we need to know the actual practicality of how we're going to do it. Okay, so these are just some pictures of some different things, depending on how you want to go about this, what you can actually use in order to actually execute and not overthink it and just do it. All right, so different things that we have, of course, are your microphones, your computers or your recorders, your essentially your DAW, basically your audio interface. So essentially those things like Adobe, the Adobe suite, such as Audition or Premiere Pro, or if you have, GarageBand or Audacity. There's a number of different things that you can use, right? So you might have equipment such as, your boards or your cameras or your lighting, your headphones and your wires and your cords. So again, depending on how you want to invest, because ultimately your story, you're investing in your story. So depending on what you want to do, right, this is essentially what, some different things that can be used. There are ways that you can get stuff done, for under a couple $100, things to subscriptions that you might be able to do on a regular basis. Or if you want to go full out, and you want to invest in this and you want to essentially make money other ways, you can invest in the full suite of different products in order to kind of go through these things. So we'll go to the next slide. All right, so again, just to kind of reiterate, so you have different things. This is a more listing it. You have your computers, your phones, your microphones, headphones, audio interface, mixers, editing software. And one thing I really want to kind of emphasize is a podcast hosting site or a hosting site in general, right? So what that is, if you have a podcast, you do not upload your podcast to Apple, Spotify, or any of the other players directly for the most part. The way that this whole thing is set up, right, is that you have a website that you can essentially upload your podcast to, upload your video to. So those are the YouTubes, the Vimeos, even Facebook and Instagram, like they essentially are hosting the content for you, right? But looking at podcasts in particular, you have a podcast that will essentially allow you to upload the actual audio file, write down your topic, your titles, your show notes and different things of that nature. And then once you actually create the episode and ready to share it, you can time it so it goes out every Tuesday at 6 a.m. And then once that happens, it then sends out an RSS feed, right? So essentially it's almost like this, like the back door of that actual program, and it feeds it directly to the other players. So again, you have a podcast site such as SoundCloud. I know a lot of people kind of look at it that way. SoundCloud is a host and also a player, and you might have a lot of those things that are interchangeable.
Is there any way that I can get the previous recordings?
We can discuss that later. We just kind of follow up with Hustle, and then we'll kind of get that situated. All right. Okay. So yeah, again, the way that kind of goes. So, and then also what is completely optional is if you're going to have essentially a marketing website for your actual content. So for the most part, you can do something like a Spotify or a Wix website, or if you want to get crafty, your Instagram page, your Facebook page, all these different social media outlets, that can be your website all on its own. Next. All right, so when you're looking at what you are potentially going to use, like for where you're actually going to have this taken care of, right? Essentially, everyone has a studio in their pocket, All right. Ultimately, if you have, I'm going to pick on iPhones. You know, I have no grievances against Android phones or anything of that nature. But if you have an iPhone and you have a well lit room, or get a lot of natural sunlight, or even if you have a space that you can kind of close out, you can create a studio anywhere. But again, it really just depends on how you want to invest in your story in terms of being able to kind of push that. So some things just may make more sense than others, right? So you have other things such as content studios like Open Media Lab at 301 North Main Street. Really couldn't help that, right? Or you can do things like what I started off with when you create your own home studio. All right, so essentially, let's kind of look at it, break it down from one piece to the other. If you are going to do podcasts, essentially, one of the things that you really have to kind of look out for is reverberation, right? So I'm pretty sure that the people who are listening to me, you can kind of hear almost like an airiness around my voice, all right? So we know that based off of what we're kind of recording here now, if I just take the audio away from this video that you're listening to or watching, this can be a podcast. Might not be the best one because essentially, along with the compelling content, you want to make sure that the quality makes sense, right? And the quality sounds really good. So again, when you have a open space in your home or your room, you want to make sure that it is essentially outfitted to kind of help cut down the reverberation. And essentially what that is when, if you look at from when you are on the phone, right, and you're talking to someone, and you're talking to somebody like in a closet or in a hallway, you want to make sure that you can kind of eliminate that airiness. When you are looking at visually, you want to make sure that you are using and working with the light and not working against it. All right, so based off of the room that I'm in right now, we have these nice LED lights. So I'm hoping that you're not seeing any flickering above me. But I'm also have these windows that are here that are giving me natural sunlight. If I was to turn the camera around and have the actual sunlight behind me, it's very, very hard to match this. And what will essentially happen is that you'll probably see it be very dark on me, and you'll be really focused on the light behind you. So, these are just different things that you can kind of take advantage of that, are just going to be things out of your control. So when you're looking at lighting, you always want to make sure that you can try to, so you have natural light, is to try to match what you have outside, what is with inside. So the LED lights help out for me, but you have other things such as, LED lights where, kind of use these to kind of help kind of create some key lighting. So if it was very dark and I had the actual lights in this room off, I could use this, right? Something similar like this, which cost me 20 bucks, right? Or you have ring lights or different things of that nature that really help be able to help establish these things. Kind of show you some other stuff. So of course we got cameras. We have different things like this camcorder, right? This camcorder cost me about 200 bucks to, essentially allows me to film things in full HD. So I can have a dedicated actual camera to be able to use rather than not use my phone. Funny thing is, I have videos out there where I did use my actual iPhone for creating other pieces of content, just like anybody else. And next week we'll definitely kind of show you a little bit more where the power of the phone that's in your pocket and kind of having some slight investment within your stuff. Yeah, so I'll go to the next slide. All right, so when we look at content production, after you have the equipment and have your space, these are essentially the steps that kind of looks at from when you actually record your episode to actually distributing it. So different things in terms of editing. So you have like your actual video, audio recording, and then when you edit things, you're going to do noise reduction, like taking away reverberation, making sure that your voice is leveled all the way through. You have manual edits that you might have to specifications and audio mastering and mixing services like adding your intro, or if you have that break, putting that piece of music or that segue, sound effect in order to kind of take you from one place to the other. And then once you have that done, you kind of get into your micro content creation, your social media posts and stuff like that, and then your distribution to the different places such as Apple, Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, and so on and so forth. All right. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so finally, we're going to look at investment here. We're going to be very, very honest. All right, so you have different things like, from looking at your investment, depending on what your content is, you can do things for, and this is assuming that you already have a phone, right? So I'm not looking at in terms of buying a new phone or anything of that nature, but a lot of things that really kind of assist you along with that ride. So, looking at your starter kits, you have things such as LED lights. You also have things like tripods. So, you have different tripods that you can buy on any, different platforms such as your Amazons, your Mercaris, anything, or actual eBay or, resell things in order to be able to get yourself started. So, of course, if you have a, like a tripod, you might do certain things like, making sure that your light is attached to your tripod so that it's not really being held by you, or you can attach your phone or your camera to your tripod and be able to walk around with it, if you're doing a vlog or something of that nature. Also, there are also different microphones that you can attach to say things like your phone that kind of helps give you a little bit more crisp actual sound rather than using a microphone directly on your phone. All right, the next thing, so you have different things like content studios, which are more on a monthly basis, right? Can average, depending on what you're looking at, you can say around $400 a month, monthly, if you're going to have something, very simple and, having it, not having to invest in any of the equipment because you want a certain quality, but you'll be able to listen to, have the perfect conditions for your audio, or renting the cameras that content studio might have, and it covers your editing services and all these other different things that essentially, even if you might save the money with the starter kit at $150, there are still other things that you have to invest in, such as your editing services. Unless you're just super perfect and one take Drake in it, sometimes you have to invest in some other things. So, and of course, you have other things like your home studio, or your regular studio, depending on the situation. Those things can go up as high as 10 grand. And again, with this is that you have all the different pieces of equipment, such as your computer or your editing software. Making sure that you're going to buy it and not pirate it. We're not doing those type of things, right? But you have different things like boards. One thing in particular that I'm going to show is the Rodecaster Pro, right? Basically, this is something that I have that I use in the Open Media Lab, which essentially is a board. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, right? This is a board that essentially is made for people to podcast. So what this board does is that you can have 4 microphones. You can attach something via USB, your phone, or Bluetooth. It even has sound pads directly tied into it. So if you had any sound effects that you want to do, or if you want to attach, say, like your intro music, you're now being able to have a whole studio all in one, right? Where this machine here, you can now actually record your episode as if it's almost like a radio show, right? This thing also has microphones built in. You can actually record directly to the interface of this itself, and then take it out and put it on your computer for you to edit. Or if you do it perfectly, you can take it directly from the board, upload it, and then put it to your, and actually get it out there for you, other people to actually take in.
What's the name of the thing they wanted?
So this is called the Rodecaster Pro.
RODE.
Yes. This costs about $600 by itself. Right? But this has a lot of the other things that you kind of need, like in terms of audio processing, different things of that nature that are directly tied into it. So to kind of simplify it, if you look on the back here, you literally can have the board and your laptop. and essentially it is almost like a studio, like a to-go studio, right? But this is more on the higher end, right? So if you are going to be a solo, like a solo podcaster or something like that, or if you're going to do more video, there are other things that are less costly. These are more like that sweet spot between the super pro user and someone who is figuring it out on their own. So you have other things.
If someone was to get some space at the Open Media Lab to do their podcast or blog or whatever the case may be, does access to that come with it?
Yes. So when you look at working at the Open Media Lab, essentially the fees that you pay allow you to rent out the space and have access to the equipment. Me as an engineer for you, so you're not doing it on your own. And essentially you will walk away with the raw audio or the raw video after your session, right? So you can, come in, rent the space and have a podcast up to 4 people. And if you just only want to do that, that's fine. Or if you wanted to add video to your actual session so that you can actually record it as well, literally from beginning, from thought, from when it's a thought in your head to actually getting it out for you full service, we kind of do it all.
Thank you.
Yes. So some other, cost efficient, things that you can actually use is that what we have here is a field recorder, right? So a field recorder essentially is not as robust as, say, the Rodecaster Pro, but this is something that if you are somebody who is, traveling and you want to be able to be able to do stuff on the go, this right here allows you to actually have interviews directly, or you can talk to the microphones and the top of the device. You can connect an actual microphone itself to here, or you have, the 2 inputs, or there's some that have 4 inputs, where essentially this is like almost like your board on its own, because there are certain things that this allows you to do to kind of create more of a controlled experience and be able to control the levels and different things of that nature. And this here costs around $200. So we're kind of looking at 2 different, two different things. And again, this is more for the, for more of like kind of like not pro user, but someone who's a little bit more dedicated into making sure that you have some quality. There are different ranges of different things that you can actually use. I mean, if you really, to be honest, you can literally use the voice recorder on your phone as, that board if you want to. It's all about making sure that your environment is as perfect as possible in order to make sure you can kind of get that crisp feeling or that actual, effect that you really want in that final product. So we'll scroll down. Do you have any questions? All right, so that is going to wrap it up for today. I really appreciate you guys coming in, right? So if you guys have any questions, I want to take some time out to answer any questions right now. It can be about anything. If it's something about previous sessions, again, reach out to Hustle and they'll get you access to the different decks that we had in the previous one.
You can send us an email to hustlewsinfo@gmail.com. That's hustlewsinfo@gmail.com. And just let us know what you need and we'll be happy to send it to you. Are you going to talk about the raffle?
Yes. So for those that are actually in the Zoom call, actually across all, if you will send your email or send an email to Hustle and let them know that you actually attended today's session, right? You will essentially get a chance or a ticket or a raffle for those who've been here for the whole month to actually get a full service pilot episode taken care of by yours truly at the Open Media Lab. So if you already have a podcast or a blog, we'll kind of like work that out if you win in terms of what that looks like for you. But if you have a concept that you essentially are hoping that you've taken advantage of over the last
can't hear a word.
Developing and then putting
What is
everything
the deal
together, like your format, your topics, we will create your
actual pilot episode for free, zero cost to you, for you, right? And we'll take care of that so we can just get you started.
And just to make one clarification, you can send us an email, but we did get the names of everybody on Instagram Live, Facebook Live, and if you're on the Zoom, we raffle at the end of next week. We'll be here same time, same place next week. Hustle, as well as the Foresight Tech Small Business Center, will send out the link, as well as Flywheel will send out the link where you can join us next week to close out this session of this Marketing Outside the Box. And just thank you, Ethan, for putting that into the chat. Just making sure there aren't any more questions before we close out. Give you another minute or two, actually 30 seconds or so to see if there are any other questions.
Again, I want to thank you. Again, we talked about this earlier today. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. You could have been doing anything, could have been anywhere in the world, but you're online with me, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll kind of float. Yeah, float.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and be safe.
Well, she started it on.
Or you could automatically stop it on Facebook, because I just stopped sharing. Somebody say something.